Welcome to Day 65 on the Trail. We have 5 readings for today, from Acts 14 verses 1 through 28, Exodus 37 verse 10 through 38 verse 20, Proverbs chapter 2 verse 1 through 3:12, the 70th Psalm, and the Wisdom of Solomon chapter 16 verses 1 through 14. After meeting resistance in Antioch and Iconium, Paul and Barnabas traveled to Lycaonia, Lystra, and Derbe. Some wonder why Paul chose these places. They did not have a large population and did not lie upon important trade routes. Therefore, we may consider these to be rural areas. Their visit to Lystra begins with Paul healing a man who had been crippled from birth. We have seen similar stories in the Gospels. Someone has a disease or crippled, and with a command, Jesus healed them. In Lystra, Paul and Barnabas are met with a variety of responses to this miracle, one of which is particularly interesting. In Acts chapter 14, beginning in verse 11, when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul they called Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates. He and the crowds wanted to offer sacrifice. By the way, the King James calls them Jupiter and Mercury, the Roman counterparts to Zeus and Hermes. On the one hand, this seems like a reaction out of thanksgiving. However, it may have been a reaction out of fear. The people of the region believed a legend based on a poem written 50 years earlier by the Latin poet Ovid in his work Metamorphoses. According to Ovid, one day Zeus and his son Hermes came down to the hill country disguised as mortals, and they were seeking lodging. Though they asked at 1,000 homes, no one would take them in. Finally, at a humble cottage made of straw and reeds, a poor, elderly couple welcomed them in and gave to them out of their poverty. Later, Zeus and Hermes rewarded them, but destroyed by flood the homes that would not take them in. Therefore, perhaps those who saw the miracle of Paul and Barnabas were not interested in the healing as much as they did not want to make the same mistake again. However, this is the opposite reaction that Paul and Barnabas expected. Beginning in verse 14, when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their clothes and rushed out into the crowd shouting, "Friends, why are you doing this? We are mortals just like you, and we bring you good news that you should turn from these worthless things to the living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. In past generations, he allowed all nations to follow their own ways. Yet he has not left himself without a witness in doing good, giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, and filling you with food and your hearts with joy." Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the crowds from offering sacrifice to them. Here we find an important core to Paul's early message to the Gentiles. Paul connects the message of Jesus to what can be known of God from creation. God is present and involved in the world he created, and we can learn about God from the creation itself, which everyone has access to. The question is, are we paying attention? Are we seeking to know God from what can be known? We will see Paul expand on this idea in Romans. Speaking of the Gentiles, Paul writes, beginning in verse 19 of Romans chapter 1, "For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made." We will spend more time on this point when we come to the book of Romans on day 97. In the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 16, verses 5 through 15, we find a reflection on the story of the bronze serpent from Numbers 21. This is the last of the complaint stories in the wilderness. However, this time, the people do not just complain against Moses, they direct their grievance against God as well. Therefore, God sends venomous serpents among the people, and many perished. Once again, Moses intercedes for the Israelites. In response, God instructs Moses to set up a bronze serpent on a pole, and anyone who looks at the serpent would be saved. As the author of the Wisdom of Solomon points out, it was not the image of the serpent that saved them, but the mercy and compassion of God. This event was also referenced by Jesus in John 3:14 and 15, which reads, "And just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life." Also, in our reading from Proverbs today, Proverbs 3, verse 11, speaks to the critically important role that God's discipline has in our lives. While discipline is not always pleasant or welcome in the moment, when administered in love and with compassion, discipline helps us grow, become stronger, and actually brings peace. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11 says it this way: "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.